The Invest in Her podcast is brought to you in part by Wells Fargo Bank. Hi, I'm Catherine Gray, founder of She Angel Investors and co-founder of the She Angels Foundation. I'm also the podcast host of Invest in Her and an award-winning producer, author, and TEDx speaker. Our show, Invest in Her, features phenomenal female founders and funders. As you know, women receive less than 2% of venture capital funding. Our series is about accelerating the funding of women by connecting them to funding resources. Let's meet today's guest. Welcome to this week's episode of Invest in Her. I'm your host, Catherine Gray, founder of She Angel Investors and co-founder of the She Angels Foundation, and the producer of the new movie, Show Her the Money. And Show Her the Money is about the underfunding of women and how we can get more women entrepreneurs funded. And that's what my guest is all about today. She is the CEO of She Backs Me, coming to us from Sydney, Australia. Let's welcome to the show, Shelin David. Hi, Shelin. How are you?
Hi, Catherine. I'm great. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity and great to be here.
You bet. Well, you know, on this 100-city tour of the film, loved being in Sydney and Melbourne, Australia with you at two phenomenal screenings. And I really applaud you for the events that you put together around the movie. They were incredible.
Yeah, no, thanks, Catherine. Thank you for producing the movie. I think it was really important for people, for the women and men in Australia and everyone else, to watch the documentary because it really talked about, I think we talked about this, not just the four amazing founders, but also the women investors. Because we don't normally see women investors talking about, their journey as to why they got into investing in startups and how and what drives them. So that was really powerful. Thank you.
Yeah, the enthusiasm and magic in those rooms was incredible, just palpable. And you really put together a great group of women. I want to talk today about She Backs Me, which was, of course, founded by Marianne Anderson, who invests directly in women, and you are both also affiliated like ambassadors for Coralus. So I want to talk about that today too, because all of these entities are helping women to start to invest, to find investors, and we need communities like yours, She Backs Me, to bring the entrepreneurs and the investors together and then give them, platforms to be able to connect. And so I love the work that you're doing, and especially I have found outside of the U.S., in places like Australia, where you're coming to us from today, there's so much need for more infrastructure in that arena. And so I really applaud what you're doing. So let's talk about what She Backs Me is doing. You're building a community of investors that are dedicated to empowering Australian women entrepreneurs. And with your background in finance and strategy and operations, you are the ideal person to be getting this started. So let's talk about, what your community does and what the future holds and what you're trying to build there.
Yeah, thank you. So She Backs Me did start off out of Coralus. So if you don't know Coralus is an organization that started out of Canada. It is essentially a system where women pay a particular membership fee that goes into a perpetual fund that's then used to provide up to 5 interest-free loans in each jurisdiction. So Canada, Australia, New Zealand, the US, and UK.
And I want to just interject. A lot of people know Coralus by its previous name, which was SheEO, right?
That's correct. That's right.
That Vicky Saunders had started. Yeah. And now it's called Coralus. So, and you and Marianne are ambassadors of that for Australia.
Correct. So we're activators is what you sort of call us. So we are activators who essentially pay a particular membership fee, goes into a fund, and that perpetual fund so carries on. So
yeah, I actually belong to that. And so if people are
awesome.
interested in that, like you said, they donate. I think is it $1,500, something like that, a year. It's
1,200,
tax
yep, correct, yeah.
deductible. It's put into a pool, and then
Mm-hmm.
different entrepreneurs pitch for that money. And I think they do amounts of like 100,000 to help
Correct.
boost entrepreneurs, and they do several a year. And so it's a great formula that's been really great. And then they have ambassadors all over the world to promote this program. And you and Marianne are the ones in Australia. So did that work that you're doing with that lead to She Backs Me, right?
Yes and no.
Okay.
I think that the Coralists definitely gave birth, if you like, to She Backs Me in a way, because that's how Marianne and a group of other women initially started She Backs Me, because they wanted to provide funding to more women, not just the finalists but the semi-finalists that were involved. My sort of personal involvement into the space started with me sort of working with clients as a fractional CFO and working with some awesome women founders and entrepreneurs, and getting to the point where when they're starting to raise capital, just getting asked ridiculous questions by male investors, but also just not having enough women funders, I should say, in Australia to back them as well. So I actually started my own little initiatives back in 2022 under a different organisation called Women for Impact. We organised Australia's first female founders pitch night of colour. We organised a few other events, but couple of the events that we've organised that we're now bringing back through She Backs Me are these intimate dinner parties where we connect women founders to women funders, and we thought that was really powerful because the women founders who attended the events also loved the idea of meeting other women founders, funders, investors, who they wouldn't ordinarily meet in their day to day. And through my work at Women for Impact, I was then asked to join the team at She Backs Me. Early last year, I had the opportunity to lead She Backs Me and take that forward. So here we are.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I know you've pioneered some innovative funding approaches and that you all are working on having funds that, are based on finance loans and angel syndicates. Explain to me, like, what you're doing, where you're headed to help, fund these entrepreneurs.
Yeah, so She Backs Me initially started providing revenue-based financing. So that's similar to loans. However, instead of your traditional sort of loans by banks where your repayments are a set amount is a set amount every month or every payment period, revenue-based financing, your repayments are based on your revenue for the month, as well as our interest rates that we had on our revenue-based loans was much more, I want to say, equitable than what you'd probably find banks give out. Because there are statistics in Australia, at least, I'm not sure about the US, but in Australia, there are statistics by the Australian Bureau of Statistics that actually say not only do women entrepreneurs receive a lower amount of capital from banks, lower amount of loans from banks, but women entrepreneurs also get charged a much higher interest rate, so they also get penalised. So that's how we started, and then we still
And let me just ask you about these revenue-based loans. So this would be private monies that people are putting in to get a decent interest rate on their money, knowing that they're also helping female entrepreneurs. And then this allows the female entrepreneurs to get loans but not go through a bank that might charge them a higher rate and give them a lower amount of money. Is that correct in doing a little synopsis of that?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. And if could also add to that, so it's essentially, if you think about traditional sort of angel syndication, ordinarily that would be equity investment, so price round. So what we do for revenue-based financings, we do actually create a syndicate. However, those funds are pooled for the purposes of providing a revenue-based loan to a particular to women entrepreneurs. Now, the other reason some women entrepreneurs also prefer revenue-based financing is because they don't have to give away equity. And some of our investors who have partaken in our revenue-based financing syndicates also prefer that method of financing because they would like to keep as much equity as possible in the hands of women.
And so they'd rather do a loan and just get an interest payment. So it's a win-win because the investor giving the loan probably is getting a higher interest rate than they would from the bank. And then the recipient is paying a lower interest rate than the bank. So a total win-win. I think that's a great model. And that's something that I think you're looking at for your future funds, right? To do more of that and then also start to eventually build a fund where women are investing in like a venture capital fund that then deploys capital to the entrepreneurs in your circle. Is that right?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. So early last year, one of the women entrepreneurs or founders in my network reached out and said that they had been talking to a whole bunch of investors. All these investors are interested, but none of them want to lead. And they've all said to her, come back to us when you find a lead investor. And when she told me what the issue was, what that sort of roadblock was, I said to her, well, actually, She Backs Me can lead. So how about we create an angel syndicate, and become lead investors and essentially, invest in our first, priced round equity investment. So that's how we got into that. And we have announced that we're raising for 2 funds. So in the next 12 months, we're looking to raise a fund for an equity fund, as well as a loans fund.
That's great. So women have an opportunity to do either or both. They could put money into the loan fund, get their money back at a good interest rate and know they're helping other women, or they could invest in the fund that will then invest for equity in these female entrepreneurs. And, women entrepreneurs, as you and I both know, tend to have a better return, a sooner exit, and just be more profitable. So why wouldn't we invest in women, right? So your fund is going to be an excellent opportunity for that. And people need to check out shebacks.me, correct?
That's
She
correct,
Backs
yes.
Me, but that's very clever. Shebacks.me. And I know that started with Marianne because she would see that the people in the Coralist group, there were winners, but then the semifinalists were just as impressive. And she ended up deciding to invest in them directly and encouraging other members of the group to do the same, realizing that, hey, people could be angel investors directly into these companies, right? And so I think she's an amazing person in that capacity, and I love that she has started She Backs Me for more women to invest directly and put someone of your caliber in charge of, being the CEO of this entity, because I saw there's such a hunger for this in Australia and anywhere out of the U.S. In the U.S., there is a demand also, but we do tend to have more female-founded funds and more support, even though we have a long way to go. But those areas outside of the country have even less resources. So thank goodness for entities like She Backs Me that are helping to lead the way in this particular arena. I had noticed in your bio that you were a lead investor for a woman in the network. How's that going? What was that about? Can you share that with us?
Yeah, that was the story that I just mentioned, where the woman investor was struggling to find a lead investor. So maybe just for privacy reasons, This is a fantastic women entrepreneur. She's very well known in her field of work and in what she does in her startup. And yeah, like I said, they were struggling to find a lead investor. By becoming lead investors, we were essentially able to help raise $400,000 worth of capital, $400,000 of capital, which then enabled them to also be eligible for a non-dilutive capital pathway of about another 400,000. So effectively unlocking about 800,000 for them.
That's fantastic. What kind of product was this? Was this technology or what?
It was a tech. It is a tech startup, and I think that's probably why I was really wanting to make sure that She Backs Me offered options for financing for capital pathways, because the revenue-based financing loans were fantastic, but they were smaller amounts, and that meant that if a tech startup came to us and they needed a bigger amount of capital outlay, that our community of investors may not have necessarily said yes to that, but being able to create a syndicate and then attract other investors to then lead a priced round was something that we were able to do. And I'm a huge believer in options. I think, people have I think you need to have options, not just for the founders, but also for the investors. Because I think it's hard to know who's motivated by what, but giving people the options allows them to participate in different ways as well.
Yeah, I think that's so smart of you to offer both. Some people would rather loan the money. Some people would rather get equity. And many people really should be probably doing both. So I think that's a wise thing to offer those different choices. One thing you said I really loved is that helping women is good for all economic growth. And Australia as a whole is going to benefit from having more entities like yours, allowing women to get either loans or equity investments in venture capital. And like you said, there's no one way for women to grow their business. So it's good to have options, because some companies are meant for venture capital. They're high growth companies like this one you just mentioned in the technology sector. Other ones just need a loan. Maybe they're a coffee shop or some sort of sole ownership type of business, and they just need a loan. So something for everyone, right?
Yeah.
So you had shared in your bio that you had a really strong mother as a role model. Tell me about that, because I think it led to the great things that you're doing today.
Yeah, thank you, Catherine. I think my mum, we come from a family of immigrants in Australia, and my mum was definitely a high achiever, and I think instilled in us a lot of great values, but also great work ethic, whilst also having a really strong community focus, which I think where I get my passion for ensuring that, there is equity and equality for everyone.
Where did they immigrate from?
So we're Tamil Sri Lankans. That's our background. I actually wanted to share that one of the things that I think that we also need to be doing as a society, just globally, is also looking back to how are some of the ways that women have, previously helped to support their communities. And one story that I've shared in quite a couple of the events that I've attended is, growing up, my mum and a couple other, Tamil Sri Lankan friends would have this fund essentially between themselves, this little pool of funds where they would each contribute a certain amount of funds every month. And every month, one person in that friendship group would have access to the entire pool. And they could use use that pool to, pay for bills, pay for a holiday, pay, do whatever it is that they wanted to do. And when I remember sharing the story at one of our first events at Women for Impact in 2022, and I had people from different ethnicity backgrounds, essentially, saying that they remembered their grandmother or mother doing something like that, or being involved in something like that. So I do think that women have always and will always find ways to support community, and if you like, their villages. But I think we do need to have some of those, conversations about how did we do it? How are what is some of that lost knowledge or lost sense of community that we need to start bringing back and embracing as well?
Right, exactly. And if people feel compelled, they could do loans or investments in your Australia funds, right?
That's correct. Absolutely. Yeah. And I want to be very clear that, one of the things that we're doing is building out our, relationships, if you like, with, other communities doing similar things or passionate about the same, topics, in the US, Canada, Singapore, other parts of Asia Pacific. So yeah, absolutely. If anyone's, listening to the podcast and would like to, see the quality of deal flow, that we have in Australia, I'd love to have a chat to them. Some of the world's, top unicorns have come from Australian women, and Australian women of colour. So Canva, if you know Canva and if you've used it.
Yes, Canva. We absolutely use that. I didn't know that was an Australian entrepreneur woman. That's really awesome.
And a woman of colour too. So and from a migrant family too.
Wow. So, I love that. Thanks for sharing that.
I think we need to do more. And naturally, I think, with my intersectional identities that I carry and hold, which is, being a woman, but a woman of colour. I'm also neurodivergent. I'd like to be able to see our funds support women who also come from these intersectional identities, and also hopefully get to a point where we can start raising funds and backing more BIPOC and LGBTQIA plus as well, people in Australia, because again, we don't currently have funds that are specifically focused for those communities.
Those are all the overlooked communities everywhere, even here in the U.S. And what an opportunity to invest in all those ideas and innovations of those sectors that have been untapped. It's a great opportunity for investors. So how do we reach She Backs Me? We go to shebacks.me. We go to shebacks.me. You all are on social media, I take it?
That's correct. We're on LinkedIn. We're on Instagram. I might just give out my email address if people wanted to get in touch with me directly, and it's Shelin, SHELIN, at shebacks.me. So feel free to drop me an email and get in touch.
Love that. And Shelin, you're on LinkedIn also?
I am. That's correct. And it's under Shelin David. So that's SHELIN David, DAVID.
Yeah, thanks for doing that for our audio listeners. Well, thanks for all the great work you're doing. So excited to continue to work with you, and really appreciate you doing the screenings there. For those listening, you can find Shelin David on LinkedIn. You can also find me, Catherine Gray, Catherine with a C and Gray with an A. And of course, you can follow our movie, Show Her the Money. And my website is also sheangelinvestors.com, where we have lots of resources to help you learn about investing and to places all around the world, like She Backs Me. Also, on our movie site, showherthemoneymovie.com, you can find our screening schedule, where we're going to be, how you could book us, how you could book it for your company, your group, as far as we're going to be rolling out streaming pay-per-view, so you'll be able to have your group see it online. So that's coming, and that's in the future, and we are just so thrilled to be on our 100-city tour, meeting incredible women around the world like Shelin and her group there in Sydney and Melbourne, Australia. Everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. Shelin, thanks for being a great guest. Make it a great week, everybody, and remember to invest in